You have been lied to. Since the day you were born, you have been fed a very specific script about how to survive in the world. Your parents, your teachers, and your society told you the script. Go to school. Get good grades. Find a safe, secure job with benefits. Work hard. Save your money in a bank. Buy a house. And eventually, at age 65, you can retire and finally enjoy your life. That script is not a blueprint for wealth. It is a blueprint for slavery. It is a system designed to keep you trapped in what the financial world calls the rat race. Welcome to the Book Vault. Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki is the most famous personal finance book of the modern era, and it did not become a phenomenon by offering polite budgeting tips. It became a phenomenon because it violently dismantles the middle-class illusion of money. Robert Kiyosaki had a unique childhood. He grew up with two fathers. His biological father, his poor dad, was a highly educated, brilliant man with a PhD. He was the head of education for the state of Hawaii. He had a great salary, absolute job security, and the respect of society. Yet, he struggled with debt his entire life and died with nothing but unpaid bills. His best friend's father, his rich dad, was an 8th grade dropout. He never went to high school, let alone college. But he understood the fundamental laws of money. He went on to become one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii, leaving a massive empire to his family. Two fathers. Two entirely different philosophies on money. Over the next 3 sessions, we are going to unlearn everything the school system taught you about money. In part 1, we will expose the emotional traps of fear and greed, and we will redefine the very words asset and liability. Throw away your report card. It is time for your financial education to begin. Chapter 1. The Rich Don't Work for Money, the Lesson of the Rat Race. When Robert Kiyosaki was 9 years old, he asked his rich dad to teach him how to make money. Rich Dad agreed, but he did not sit the boy down in a classroom. He put him to work. He made Robert and his friend Mike work in one of his convenience stores, dusting cans and stacking shelves for 3 hours every Saturday. The pay? Pathetic 10 cents an hour. After a few weeks, Robert was furious. 10 cents was an insult. He marched into Rich Dad's office, demanding a raise, threatening to quit. He felt exploited. He felt used. Rich Dad smiled. He said, "Congratulations. You are sounding exactly like most of my employees. You have just experienced the trap." Rich Dad explained that the vast majority of humanity is controlled by 2 invisible emotional masters: fear and greed. First, fear. The fear of not having money drives people to wake up early, sit in traffic, and go to a job they hate. They are terrified of not paying the rent. They are terrified of being fired. This fear forces them to accept a steady paycheck as their only source of security. Second, greed, or desire. Once they get the paycheck, greed takes over. They look at the money and immediately think of all the things they can buy. They want the new car. They want the bigger house. They want the vacation. So what happens? They get a promotion. They make more money. But because they are controlled by greed, they immediately upgrade their lifestyle. They buy a bigger house, which means a bigger mortgage, which means higher property taxes. Now, their expenses have risen to meet their new income. Their fear returns, stronger than ever, because they have more debt to service. So they work harder. They beg for another raise. This endless, terrifying cycle of working to earn, spending, and working harder to service the new debt is the rat race. To break this cycle, Rich Dad offered 9-year-old Robert a new deal. "I will keep teaching you, but from now on you will work in the store for free." Robert was shocked, but he accepted. After working for free for a few weeks, something miraculous happened. Because Robert was no longer expecting a paycheck, because the crutch of the 10 cents was removed, his brain was forced to look for other opportunities. He noticed that the convenience store manager was throwing away old comic books. Robert asked if he could keep them. He took the discarded comics, put them in his basement, and started a comic book library. He charged the neighborhood kids 10 cents admission. Soon, the comic book library was generating $9 a week in pure profit, completely passively, while Robert was not even in the room. He had learned the absolute, fundamental first rule of wealth. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. If you spend your life desperately chasing a paycheck, you are a slave to the employer and a slave to the government, who takes their cut in taxes before you even see the money. You must shift your entire paradigm. You must stop trading your finite time for dollars and start building systems that generate dollars while you sleep. Chapter 2. Why teach financial literacy? The foundation. If you win the lottery tomorrow and receive $10 million, what will happen? Statistically, within 5 years, you will be completely broke. Why? Because money without financial intelligence is money soon gone. Poor Dad believed that the solution to financial problems was simply to make more money. Rich Dad knew that making more money usually just accelerates your bankruptcy if you have terrible financial habits. If you give a fool $10,000, he buys a liability. If you give a financially literate person $10,000, they buy an asset. The problem is that the school system teaches you academic literacy, how to read, and professional literacy, how to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a mechanic. Teaches you absolutely zero financial literacy. Because of this, brilliant doctors, lawyers, and engineers graduate with massive salaries. But they spend their entire lives living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt. They are financially illiterate. To become literate, you only need to understand one rule. It is the golden rule of rich dad, poor dad. It is so simple that most highly educated people overcomplicate it and completely miss the point. Narrator. The golden rule. You must know the difference between an asset and a liability, and you must buy assets. That is it. That is the secret to wealth. If you ask an accountant or a banker to define an asset, they will give you a complicated formula involving depreciation, amortization, and net worth. Kiyosaki throws the accounting textbook in the trash. He uses the definition of a street-smart billionaire. The rich dad definition. An asset puts money into your pocket. The liability takes money out of your pocket. This is not about the theoretical value of the item. It is entirely about cash flow. If an item flows cash into your pocket every month, it is an asset. If an item drains cash out of your pocket every month, it is a liability. Chapter 3. The middle class myth. Your house is not an asset. This brings us to the most controversial, paradigm-shattering statement Robert Kiyosaki has ever made. It makes real estate agents furious. It makes bankers furious. Your house is not an asset. It is a liability. Let us run this through the rich dad definition. When you buy a house to live in, what happens? You have to pay a mortgage every month. You have to pay property taxes. You have to pay for insurance. You have to pay for a new roof when it leaks. You have to pay the utility bills. Every single month, that house takes money out of your pocket. By the strict definition of cash flow, your personal residence is a massive liability.
When a middle-class couple gets a raise, what do? They listen to the bankers. The banker tells them, your home is your greatest asset. So, they buy a bigger house. They take on a 30-year mortgage. They are now trapped. They must keep their jobs, no matter how miserable they are, to service the debt on their asset. They have tied up all their capital in a liability. Because their money is trapped in the house, they have no leftover cash to buy actual assets, things that would generate passive income. Kiyosaki is not saying you shouldn't buy a house. He is saying you must be financially literate enough to call it what it actually is, a liability. If you buy a rental property, and the tenant's rent covers the mortgage, the taxes, the repairs, and puts $200 of positive cash flow into your pocket every month, that house is an asset. It feeds you. Your personal residence eats you. To fully grasp this, you must visualize how cash flows through the lives of the three economic classes. 1. The cash flow pattern of the poor receive an income, a paycheck. That money immediately goes straight down to the expense column, rent, food, clothes, transportation. The money comes in, and the money goes out. They acquire no assets and no long-term liabilities. 2. The cash flow pattern of the middle class receives a larger income. But because they want to appear wealthy, the money flows into the liability column. They buy a massive mortgage. They buy a $50,000 car on a loan. They max out credit cards to buy designer clothes. These liabilities generate massive monthly expenses. The money comes in, filters through their debt, and exits as an expense. They look rich, but they are terrified, one missed paycheck away from total ruin. 3. The cash flow pattern of the rich operate entirely differently. The rich focus all of their energy on the asset column. They buy stocks, bonds, income-generating real estate, intellectual property, and businesses. These assets generate income, dividends, rental income, royalties. The money comes from the asset column, flows up into the income column, and pays for their expenses. The rich do not rely on a boss to feed them. Their assets feed them. And when their assets generate surplus income, they take that extra money and buy more assets. It is an unstoppable, upward spiral of compounding wealth. Wealth is not measured by how much money you make. Wealth is measured by time. If you stopped working today, how many days could you survive on the cash flow generated by your assets before you run out of money? If your expenses are $3,000 a month, and your assets generate $3,000 a month in passive income, you are infinitely wealthy. You have bought your freedom. You have escaped the rat race forever. You have broken the illusion. You can now see the matrix of the modern financial system. But seeing the matrix is not enough to escape it. Now, you must learn how the wealthy actually play the game. Why do the rich pay exponentially less in taxes than the middle class? What is the legal magic of a corporation, and how can you use it to protect your wealth? And what does it actually mean to mind your own business, when you are still working a 9-to-5 job? And we learned the brutal truth that your house, the American dream, is a massive liability that eats your wealth. You have changed your mindset. But mindset without mechanics is just wishful thinking. If you want to escape the rat race, you must learn the actual rules of the game. And here is the most unfair, brilliant, and devastating reality of modern capitalism: there are two sets of rules. There is the rulebook for the employees and the middle class. It is a rulebook designed to tax you into oblivion and keep you working until you die. Then, there is the rulebook for the rich. Chapter 4, Mind Your Own Business, The Ray Kroc Secret. In 1974, Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, was asked to speak to an MBA class at the University of Texas at Austin. After a brilliant, inspiring presentation, the students invited Ray out for a few beers. While they were drinking, Ray asked the students a simple question: who can tell me what business I am in? The students laughed. They thought he was joking. Finally, one student spoke up and said, "Ray, everyone in the world knows what business you are in. You are in the hamburger business." Ray Kroc stopped smiling. He looked at the student dead in the eye and said, "No. My business is not hamburgers. My business is real estate." Ray Kroc explained that selling hamburgers was just his profession. It was the mechanism he used to generate cash flow. But his business, the empire that made him a billionaire, was real estate. McDonald's is one of the largest single owners of real estate in the world. When a franchisee buys a McDonald's, they are not just buying the right to sell burgers. They are paying rent to the McDonald's Corporation for the land under the restaurant. The burgers simply pay for the real estate. Robert Kiyosaki uses this legendary story to illustrate the third rule of the rich: mind your own business. When Kiyosaki asks most people, "What is your business?" they say, "Oh, I am a banker." Or, "I am a software engineer." He replies, "Do you own the bank? Do you own the software company?" They say, "No, I work for them." Kiyosaki tells them, "Then that is not your business. That is your profession. You are minding someone else's business. If you are an employee, you spend your entire life minding everyone else's business, while completely neglecting your own. 1. You work for the company owners, your sweat makes the shareholders rich. 2. You work for the government, before you even see your paycheck, the government takes 20% to 40% in taxes.
3. You work for the bank. After you pay your taxes, your biggest expense is your mortgage and credit card debt. You are working to make the bank wealthy. You must start minding your own business. Kiyosaki is not telling you to quit your day job immediately. Keep your day job. Keep your profession. Use it to generate capital. But your business is your asset column. Every dollar that flows into your bank account is a seed. Do not plant those seeds in the liability column. New cars, bigger TVs, designer clothes. Plant those seeds in your asset column. Buy real estate, buy index funds, buy intellectual property. When you spend your evenings and weekends building your asset column, you are finally minding your own business. Build the column until the cash flow it generates completely replaces the salary of your profession. Chapter 5. The History of Taxes, the Robin Hood Myth. If you want to build your asset column, you must plug the biggest hole in your financial bucket. For the middle class, the single largest expense of their entire life is not food, housing, or transportation. It is taxes. To understand how the rich avoid taxes, you must understand the history of the tax code. In the early days of England and the United States, there were no permanent income taxes. Taxes were only levied temporarily to pay for wars. But in 1913, the United States passed the 16th Amendment, creating a permanent income tax. How did the government convince a free population to vote for a permanent tax on their hard-earned money? They used the Robin Hood myth. The politicians told the working class, "This tax is not for you. This tax is only to punish the rich. The greedy industrialists have too much money. Vote for this tax, and we will take their money and give it to you." Driven by a combination of envy and a desire for free government services, the working and middle classes voted to pass the income tax.
But the rich are not stupid. They do not just hand over their money because a politician passes a law. The rich have the resources, the lawyers, and the financial intelligence to outsmart the system. When the government realized the rich had escaped the net, but the government's appetite for spending was still growing, who did they turn to? They turned to the very people who voted for the tax. The tax net was lowered. It dropped down to the middle class, and eventually to the poor. Today, the Robin Hood myth is dead. The rich pay a fraction of their wealth in taxes, while the middle class is absolutely decimated by income tax, payroll tax, sales tax, and property tax. The trap designed to catch the rich ended up enslaving the middle class. Chapter 6, The Corporate Shield, the Magic of Pure Tax Spending. So, how did the rich escape the tax trap? They used the ultimate financial shield, the corporation. When middle-class people hear the word corporation, they imagine a massive glass skyscraper filled with thousands of employees and a board of directors. Kiyosaki strips away this illusion. A corporation is not a building. A corporation is not a factory. A corporation is merely a legal document, a manila folder sitting in an attorney's office, recognized by the government as a separate legal entity. And this manila folder contains the greatest legal loophole in the history of capitalism. To understand the power of the corporate shield, you must look at the mathematical order in which money flows. The employee's order of operations. 1. Earn. You work a job and earn $100,000. 2. Tax. The government immediately steps in. Before you even touch the money, they take $30,000. 3. Spend. You are left with $70,000 to pay your mortgage, buy food, and try to survive. The employee is taxed on their gross income. They are penalized for working. The corporation's order of operations. 1. Earn. The corporation earns $100,000.
2. Spend. The corporation pays for all of its expenses before the government touches it. It pays for the owner's car, a company vehicle, the owner's travel, board meetings in Hawaii, dinners, client entertainment, and health insurance. Let's say the corporation spends $80,000 on these pre-tax expenses. 3. Tax. The government only taxes the $20,000 that is left over. This is the biggest secret of the wealthy. Employees earn, pay taxes, and try to live on what is left. Corporations earn, spend everything they possibly can on legitimate business expenses, and only pay taxes on the scraps that remain. Chapter 7. Financial IQ, the 4 pillars of intelligence. You now know that you must build an asset column, and you must protect it with a corporate shield. But how do you actually acquire the assets? How do you know a good deal from a bad deal? You must develop your financial IQ. Kiyosaki defines financial IQ as a synergy of 4 distinct, interlocking skills. If you are missing even one of these pillars, your financial fortress will collapse. 1. Accounting, financial literacy. This is your ability to read numbers. It is the language of business. If you cannot read an income statement and a balance sheet, you are financially blind. You must be able to look at a company's or a property's financials and immediately see where the cash is flowing. Accounting is what allows you to spot a liability masquerading as an asset. 2. Investing, the science of money, making money. This is the creative side. This is the strategy. Investing is understanding the mechanics of how to use capital to generate more capital. It is understanding ROI, return on investment, leverage, and compounding interest. 3. Understanding markets, supply and demand. This is the science of human behavior. You must understand the macroeconomic conditions. Is there a housing shortage? Is a new industry exploding? You can have a perfect product, but if there is no demand in the market,
your investment will fail. The rich invest where the market is going, not where it has been. 4. The law, the rules of the game. As we discussed with the corporate shield, you must understand the tax code and corporate law. A person who understands tax advantages will grow their wealth exponentially faster than someone who simply saves money in a highly taxed bank account. The middle class specializes. They become a brilliant brain surgeon or a genius software coder, but their financial IQ is 0. The rich are generalists in the 4 pillars. You do not need to be a CPA, but you must know enough accounting to direct your CPA. You do not need to be a lawyer, but you must know enough corporate law to tell your lawyer what structure you want. Invest in your financial education before you invest in a single stock or piece of real estate. Your mind is the ultimate asset. Chapter 8, The Rich Invent Money, the Power of Vision. We arrive at the most thrilling concept in Rich Dad Poor Dad. Poor Dad believed that to make money, you had to work hard. Rich Dad believed that money is not real. Money is an agreement. Money is an idea. Therefore, the rich literally invent money. In the early 1990s, the real estate market in Phoenix, Arizona, completely crashed. Everyone was terrified. The middle class was holding on to their cash, saying, "Real estate is dead. It is too risky." Robert Kiyosaki saw the exact opposite. He saw the sale of the century. Kiyosaki used his financial IQ to invent money out of thin air. He found a beautiful house that was in foreclosure. The bank had repossessed it and was desperate to get rid of it. A house that was once worth $100,000 was listed for $60,000. Most people would say, "That's a great deal, but I don't have $60,000, so I can't buy it." This is the mindset of the poor. They let their lack of capital stop their imagination. Kiyosaki did not have $60,000 either. But he understood the law, and he understood the market. He offered the bank
the $20,000 plus interest. He walked away with nearly $40,000 in pure profit. You now have the mindset and you have the mechanical blueprint. You know how to recognize an asset, how to protect it with a corporation, and how to invent money using your financial intelligence. But there is one final, terrifying obstacle remaining. Why is it that so many people read this book, understand the mechanics perfectly, and still die completely broke? What are the invisible psychological chains that paralyze even the smartest people from actually executing these strategies? Chapter 9. The 5 Obstacles to Wealth. Robert Kiyosaki identifies 5 massive psychological roadblocks that prevent people from becoming rich, even when they possess high financial intelligence. You must identify which of these obstacles is currently running your life, and you must destroy it. Everyone hates losing money. The rich hate losing money, and the poor hate losing money. The difference lies in how they handle the fear. The poor and the middle class are so terrified of losing money that they play the game of life not to lose, rather than playing to win. They put their money in a safe savings account where it is slowly destroyed by inflation. They never invest because the stock market is risky or real estate is a bubble. Rich Dad had a saying, "Texans don't bury their failures. They get inspired by them." They took their greatest defeat, the Alamo, and turned it into a rallying cry. If you want to be rich, you must embrace the reality that you will lose money. Every wealthy person has lost money on a bad deal, a market crash, or a failed business. But the rich use failure as a masterclass. They analyze it, learn from it, and come back smarter. If your fear of losing is greater than your excitement for winning, you will never escape the rat race. We all have a Chicken Little in our lives. The person who is constantly screaming, "The sky is falling."
When you decide to buy your first rental property, your cynical friend will say, "What if the tenant trashes the place? What if the market crashes? What if the roof caves in?" Cynics never accomplish anything because they let their unchecked doubts paralyze them. They project their own financial cowardice onto you. Kiyosaki teaches that cynics criticize, and winners analyze. When a cynic says, "The real estate market is crashing," they hide under the bed. When a wealthy person hears the market is crashing, they analyze the data. They realize that a crash means assets are on sale. The cynic's noise becomes the wealthy person's opportunity. To build wealth, you must ruthlessly block out the noise of the uneducated cynics, even if they are your family members. This is the most deceptive obstacle of all. When we picture a lazy person, we picture someone sleeping on the couch all day. But Kiyosaki argues that the most common form of laziness is staying busy. People stay incredibly busy working 60 hours a week at a job they hate, driving their kids to soccer practice, and mowing the lawn. When you ask them why they aren't looking for investments or building a business, they say, "I'm just too busy. I don't have the time." They are using busyness as an excuse to avoid doing the hard, terrifying work of taking control of their financial destiny. It is mental laziness masked as physical busyness. The cure for laziness? A healthy dose of greed, desire. When you say, "I can't afford it," your brain shuts down. It is a lazy statement. You must replace it with, "How can I afford it?" This question forces your brain to wake up, to desire a better life, and to find a creative solution. Stop using your busy schedule as a shield against your financial responsibilities. This is the most radical, dangerous, and brilliant concept in the entire book. The middle class operates on a very specific habit: when they get paid, they pay their bills first. They pay the mortgage, they pay
the government. If there is anything left over at the end of the month, they save it. There is rarely anything left over. Rich Dad taught the exact opposite. You must pay yourself first. When you receive your income, you take a percentage, e.g. 20%, and you put it directly into your asset column. You buy stocks, you save for real estate, you fund your business. But what if I don't have enough money to pay my bills? Robert asked. Rich Dad smiled. That is the secret. I still pay myself first even if I am short on cash. The government and the creditors will start screaming. They will call my house. They will threaten me. Why would Rich Dad subject himself to that stress? Because that stress, the pressure of the unpaid creditors, forces his financial genius to wake up. He uses the sheer terror of the looming bills to motivate himself to go out and invent a new way to make money. If you pay the bills first, you have zero pressure. You relax, you go to sleep, and you never build your asset column. By paying yourself first, you guarantee that your wealth grows every single month, and you use the pressure of the outside world to force yourself to become financially smarter, hungrier, and more aggressive. Arrogance is ego plus ignorance. Many people try to mask their financial ignorance with arrogance. They act like they know everything about the stock market, or they dismiss a new asset class because they don't understand it. Rich Dad had a simple rule. What I know makes me money. What I don't know loses me money. When you recognize that you are ignorant about a subject, Whether it is commercial real estate, tax law, or index funds, you must drop your ego. You must read a book, attend a seminar, or hire an expert. Arrogance is the shield of a fragile ego. Humility is the open door to infinite wealth. Chapter 10. Getting Started. The 10-Step Blueprint. You have broken the psychological chains. You have defeated fear, cynicism, and laziness.
Now, you need a compass. How do you actually begin building your empire today? Robert Kiyosaki offers a 10-step blueprint to awaken your financial genius. 1. Find a reason greater than reality, the power of spirit. If your reason for wanting to be rich is just, I want a nice car, you will quit. The process of building wealth is too difficult, too stressful, and too lonely for a superficial goal. Your why must be a deep, burning combination of what you want and what you do not want. I do not want to work all my life like my parents. I want to travel the world. I want to have total control of my time. If your emotional fire is not burning white hot, the reality of the rat race will crush you. 2. Make daily choices, the power of choice. You choose to be rich, poor, or middle class every single day. The most important asset you possess is not your money, it is your time. When you come home from work at 6 p.m., what do you choose to do? Do you watch television for 3 hours, or do you read a book on real estate investing? Your financial future is dictated entirely by how you spend your free time. 3. Choose your friends carefully, the power of association. Do not listen to poor or frightened people when it comes to money. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate, do not ask your broke friend who has never owned property. Surround yourself with people who talk about money, deals, and business. Wealth is contagious, but so is poverty. Protect your mental environment. 4. Master a formula and then learn a new one, the power of learning quickly. Most people learn one formula, work hard for a paycheck. They spend 40 years executing a broken formula. The rich find a formula, such as buying foreclosures, or investing in dividend stocks, and they master it. Once it is generating cash flow, they do not stop. They find a new formula and master that. The speed at which you can learn new financial recipes dictates your net worth.
5. Pay yourself first, the power of self-discipline. We have covered this, but it is the hardest step to master. If you lack internal self-discipline, do not attempt to get rich. If you get a raise and immediately buy a liability, you have zero discipline. You must funnel money into the asset column before the world takes it from you. 6. Pay your brokers well, the power of good advice. The middle class resents paying real estate agents, accountants, or stockbrokers. They try to save a few pennies by doing it themselves or using cheap professionals. This is incredibly foolish. A brilliant accountant will save you millions in taxes. A brilliant real estate broker will bring you deals before they hit the market. Pay professionals generously. If they are making you rich, you want them highly motivated to work for you. 7. Be an Indian giver, the power of ROI. When the first European settlers arrived in America, the Native Americans would give them a blanket. The settlers thought it was a gift. When the Native Americans asked for the blanket back later, the settlers were offended, coining the politically incorrect term Indian giver. In the world of wealth, you must be an Indian giver. When you invest your capital, your blanket, into an asset, your number one priority is getting your initial capital back as quickly as possible while keeping the asset. If you put $50,000 into a business, you want that $50,000 back in your pocket from the profits within a year. Once your initial seed money is back in your hand, you are playing with house money. The asset is now infinite risk-free ROI. 8. Assets buy luxuries, the power of focus. The rich love luxury just as much as the middle class. They love Porsches, Rolexes, and mansions, but they never buy a luxury with their own sweat equity or credit. If a rich person wants a Porsche, they do not take a loan from the bank and pay it off with their salary. Instead, they focus their energy on buying an asset like an apartment.
Apartment building. When the apartment building generates enough passive cash flow every month to cover the car payment, the asset buys the Porsche. The luxury becomes a reward for developing their financial intelligence, not a liability that traps them in debt. 9. Choose heroes, The Power of Myth. When you were a kid playing basketball, you pretended to be Michael Jordan. Heroes make difficult things look easy. You need financial heroes. Follow Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch, or Donald Trump, in his real estate days. When you face a terrifying negotiation or a complex deal, ask yourself, what would Warren Buffett do right now? By emulating your heroes, you tap into a psychological reservoir of genius that bypasses your own fear. 10. Teach and you shall receive. The power of giving. This is the final, spiritual law of money. Whenever you feel short or in need of something, whether it is money, love, or friendship, give what you want first, and it will come back in buckets. If you want to learn about money, teach someone else about money. If you want a great deal to come your way, help someone else find a great deal. The world is a mirror of your own generosity. The poor hold on to their meager resources with clenched fists. The rich open their hands, knowing that capital, knowledge, and value must circulate to grow. Conclusion: the final departure from the rat race. You have been given the exact blueprint that separated rich dad from poor dad. Look back at the wreckage of the middle-class mindset you have left behind. You will never look at your house the same way again. You will never look at a paycheck as your savior. You will never listen to the cynical noise of the frightened crowd. You understand the absolute, undeniable truth: money is an illusion. Wealth is a mindset. You now know that the asset column is your only true business. You know that the corporate shield is your armor against the tax code. You know that fear and laziness are the invisible chains
keeping you tied to the hamster wheel. You have a choice to make today. You can close this program, go back to sleep, wake up to your alarm clock tomorrow, and spend the rest of your life minding someone else's business. You can let the government tax your labor, let the bank tax your debt, and let inflation steal your savings. Or you can wake up. You can stop working for money and force money to work for you. You can master accounting, investing, markets, and the law. You can pay yourself first, stare your creditors in the eye, and use that pressure to forge your financial genius. The rat race is over for you if you choose to exit the wheel. Now stop listening. Go acquire an asset.